In today's video, we're going to be having a look at some stimulus chat, as well as what's going on at Goldman Sachs and their view on cyclical stocks. Hello and welcome to another ACY Securities Hot Topics video. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. Now, to get things started off with a little bit of a market recap of what happened last night, we have seen a lot of data come in from sort of central banking side of things, and not so much from a physical aspect or a numerical aspect, but actually just from what we've heard from the governors and presidents of various central banks overnight. So far, the US session has tracked down. We've also seen the Asian session start to follow through with that. We've seen futures tick down in Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia has been doing the same so far this morning. So in the overnight session, we saw the S&P 500 index down 1%. The Nikkei has improved 0.68%, so it's basically little changed. We've also seen the Hang Seng down 0.2% and the ASX 200 down 0.2%. Now, moving on from that, what a lot of the talk about was on stimulus. But before we get into the central bank stuff, I'm just going to recap what we've been hearing out of the White House. Now, so far, Republicans are still wanting $500 billion to be a small stimulus package. Democrats are now seeking above $2.2 trillion at $2.4 trillion. Of course, negotiations are basically at the exact same place they were months ago. So we have seen this stalemate right on and on and on and on and on. And so at this point in time now, we've got this transition between presidential powers. And of course, we've already got a lot of news on what's going on that front. But so far, the Trump administration is not looking to get more negotiations on the table at this stage. They're open to negotiation, but aren't going to be seeking it. So that's not exactly positive news for us getting stimulus in the fourth quarter for the US economy, even though it is in dire need. And the central bankers think the exact same thing. Powell, Lagarde, and Bailey all discussed some of the problems that they've got. Some of the quotes that I've taken out of their talks last night were with the virus spreading, the next few months could be challenging. That's come from Powell. And we've also heard from Lagarde, who is talking about the idea of digitalization. And she believes that the pandemic has accelerated digitalization across the board in Europe. And she quoted as well that it was a little bit, under or behind the eight ball in terms of European digitalization. She also addressed the idea of digital currency or a central bank-based cryptocurrency, and that it is likely to happen from the ECB at some stage in the near future. But regardless, the tone was pretty pessimistic between the three of them. We had Powell, Lagarde, Governor Andrew Bailey as well, all speaking last night at a convention or a forum. And it's basically been pushing out the idea that fiscal stimulus is needed to support most economies, if not all of them. Naturally, the US situation is the primary candidate who needs it ASAP. Now, looking at Disney as well, I thought I'd pull this up because Netflix has traditionally been, over the last couple of years, the big talk of the town when it comes to subscriber bases. Now, in this point in time, Disney has outbeat its earnings expectation. They were expecting 65.5 million. They've smacked 73.7 million in terms of subscribers. So there's a pretty big jump there. They weren't anticipating that to happen. But the real bright spot has been coming from their direct-to-consumer basis. And that's what we've heard from the Chief Executive Officer, Bob Chapek. Now, of course, shares have risen 7.3%. They hit $148, and 72 cents, which is probably the best performer I've seen on the Dow Jones in the last 48 hours. And from there, we've also noticed their parks division. So the theme parks, the Disney Center and Disney World, have all had a bit of an issue, and they've come down $1.1 billion. But we weren't exactly not expecting that. We've been in the middle of a pandemic. People can't go to those sort of places. So naturally, they were to see a loss. An interesting forethought, though, that I did see was the difference between subscribers between November 12 and November 13. And coincidentally, it falls when the Mandalorian TV series, which is a Star Wars-based TV series, came out on the 13th. So people decided we're going to buy back into Disney, which does indicate to me that perhaps these figures might be a little bit artificial if for the time being, or at least temporary. And when the series ends, we might see subscribers drop off a little bit. So that might be something to watch for. Either way, we've seen Netflix down a little bit in the last couple of days, and it looks like they're chipping away very slowly at the targets they had. They had a target of 65 to 75 million subscribers on a 5-year plan for Disney Plus, and that was to be they've probably pushed that forward a little bit, probably a year, maybe even 2. So definitely one to keep your eyes on in the near future. I anticipate seeing that once we see the Mandalorian TV series do their season finale, that we might see subscriber numbers come down a little bit. Now, looking at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs are betting on cyclicals, and this means mostly on commodities, but they're also looking at the countries behind them. So they are actually long on the Aussie dollar and they are long on the Canadian dollar, or the Aussie on the loonie, if you will. Seeing that they have a rise for a demand in commodities, and both nations are commodity exporting, they're also looking at equities that might deal in commodities. So that's going to be looking at your mining, specifically in oil and in for drilling for oil, and of course mining in your iron ore and those metal-based substances as well. So some sort of trade ideas to keep an eye on. They are talking about it over the next year or two, and they see that the idea of recovery here in Australia and in Canada is likely to be better than in other parts of the world. Of course, they still note that there are still implications they're going to come across, and there will be challenges for the whole globe to face, but Australia and Canada are poised to make a better move than the rest. Now, looking at the news ahead of today, we have flash GDP out of Europe, flash employment out of Europe, we have trade balance news out of Europe. So we are going to be getting, and that is for the whole Eurozone, it's not for a specific country. As well as that, we have US producer price index figures coming out. And more importantly, the one I like to look at is the University of Michigan consumer sentiment. I always have a quick glance over on that because it does give us an indicator of how people are feeling. This will be the first one after the presidential election that we're going to be seeing. So of course, with the last one that we have is we're going to be hearing from the Bank of England's Governor Andrew Bailey again for the last time this week, and it'll be about 2:35 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So keep an eye on some of those if you're going to trade in the Friday session. Of course, happy Friday 13th. And of course, if you want to get in contact with me from anything from today, perhaps it's some of my other videos or anything else that I do put out there, feel free to shoot me an email at talk2al@acy.com or on any of my socials. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you can get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.